Okay, Chevra, Baruch Hashem, the Tanya. So we're in the second chapter, and the Tanya says that this special godly soul, which is called the Chelek Elokayim Mal Mamish, this is literally a piece, so to speak, of undiluted godliness that's inside of you. That's very encouraging, because anytime that you're feeling down, anytime that you're feeling depressed, anytime that you're feeling, who am I? If you can remember that really who you are is this godly self, that's a great way to get out of depression. Now, it's not something that happens overnight, but if you work on it and you grow with it, sounds like there's a big party happening here. Maybe Mashiach is here. Go ahead. And if you can learn to associate, if you can learn to associate with this part of you, then essentially you can actually always be in a state of happiness. This was the last one we talked about depression before. The real source of depression is that I don't associate with my godly soul. But if I can gain consciousness of this part of me, this true deep part of me, then that's a part that's always connected, that's always vibrant, happy, and that's really who you are. It just takes time to connect to it. So a big job and a big part of Torah, especially the mystical dimension, Chassidus, is focusing on teaching you about your godly soul, because then you're identified with it, and then the more you identify with that is me, you become unshakable. And even if things are crazy happening all around, I know who I am, I'm a godly soul, and you're confident with who you really are. The big master bros, Chad, like the collegiate football jacket Chad, the guy with all the girls and the keg stands who thinks he's like, everyone, wow, Chad, he's such a cool dude. He can vape like a cartridge like nobody's business. That guy Chad, he just knocks down cartridges like nothing. So Chad has got the lowest self-confidence ever. He's so associated with his animal self that when nobody's looking, Chad feels like a nobody. That's why he has to do this big outer game of all this showy stuff. But a person who's really identified with their true self is really deeply happy. So essentially in the Tanya, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about your godly soul. We're going to introduce you to your godly soul. So get ready to be reacquainted. Now we're going to see the Baal HaTanya is going to explain two analogies of the nature of this godly soul. Obviously there's nothing physical here. Your godly soul, I can't take a microscope and I show it to you, but we're going to explain conceptually two analogies of how this godly soul exists inside of us. The Torah says that we have this godly soul. And now look at the words of the Tanya. Kamoisha Kosov, like the verse itself says, this is a verse from the Torah. Vayipach be'apav nishmas chayim. And Hashem, you blew into the nostrils of man the living soul. This verse is referring to the moment of the giving over of the godly soul. And God blew into man's nostrils the living soul. Which, right away, what do we see? What's the mechanism by which the soul is given? Through breath. Okay, we're gonna have to talk about that, through breath. And now he quotes a verse. He's quoting from the davening, the prayer that we say in the morning. Elokai neshama shenosati bi tahirahi ve'ata nafachta bi, k'ma yishkaz b'Zohar, like it says in the Zohar. Man de nafach, a man that breathes. Mi toichei nafach. There's a famous line from the Zohar. It's the question exactly where this Zohar is found in a few different editions. The Zohar says when somebody blows, he blows from his inner core. Perish. The meaning is mitoichi yusoi, from his inside, umipinimi yusoi, and is from his deep pinimis, his deep inner core. Shetoichius upinimius, that the inside of you Hachiyah sheba'adam moitzi comes out. Comes out when you blow in a strong way. Your inner core, your inner life force comes out with you. So the Zohar is explaining that when Hashem breathed, so to speak, and we're going to talk about what does it mean that God is breathing. He doesn't have like these big lungs up in the sky, and it's not like, when the wind is blowing, like that's God's big breath, so to speak. He doesn't breathe like we breathe. We're going to talk about it. Our breathing, let me ask you like this. It says that God breathes. So does he breathe or not? If you say that he breathes, then are you not giving physical attributes to God? What do you say? Physical attributes to God? God is breathing. What do you mean? He's not physical. So why is it describing him breathing? God took us out of the land of Egypt with a strong hand and an outstretched arm. Okay, I see everyone's Akiva Tat's the master class here. God does breathe. We don't breathe. We don't want you to think that when God breathes, it's like, oh, I breathe, and I have a hand, so, like God's hand must look like this. No. God has a hand. Your hand is an analogy for God's hand. God has the real hand. He does. And of course, nothing physical. We're going to talk about what a hand means. Mystically, a hand means doing, action. God acts. God does things in the world. God breathes. We're going to talk about breathing. We're seeing is some sort of transfer from inside to outwards. One of the biggest proofs that your inner core, your life force comes out when you breathe in a powerful way. I always say this story. When I was first married, so newly married guy. We went to see my family in Toronto. I was going to be like you got to impress your wife, a little bit macho. So we had to get an extra blow up air mattress just to be comfortable. We stayed at a place we weren't expecting to stay. So I'm thinking we'll just crash whatever. And then my mother suggested maybe get your wife an air mattress. I think she'll okay, good point, Mom, thank you. So we got an air mattress, but we didn't have a pump for it. So I thought to myself, I got this one, don't worry. I've blown up balloons before. So I get the air mattress, and meanwhile my mom and my wife are trying to call people, look at gemachs, where can we get pumps and stuff. I said, no, don't worry about this. Took out my jacket. Blowing this mattress up. I'm getting a little bit lightheaded. And, they're like, you okay in there? Maishi? I'm like, no, I got this one. Are you guys really looking for it? I'm totally got that. Don't worry about it. At that point, my wife comes in here's a cup of water. Just, don't worry, I'm fine. What are you? 1 minute goes, 2 minutes go by. I thought the thing was probably halfway done. I was just looking. I looked nothing. The mattress is nothing. I would have thought, at least give me some hope. The mattress is getting somewhere. Nothing. After 3 minutes, I'm passed out beside the mattress. My wife and I, don't worry, we found a pump. I'm like, don't worry, I'm still going. Why are you so tired after you blow so much? Because when you blow strong, this is what the Zohar means, you're, so to speak, drawing on your inner core, your life force. And when you blow strong, something, this is a mystical idea, is coming out with you, with that breath. What it means that God blew into Adam this godly soul means somehow God, so to speak, gave of his inner core, and it came out through God's breath. And Adam received that, and now inside of Adam is, so to speak, that chiyus, that pnimius, that inner light of Hashem, undiluted. Yeah.
If that's an idea of when you're breathing out a lot, you're losing part of that core of yourself, and why you feel the same way almost when you hold your breath and hold that in.
It's a good question. I think it's a bit different. Like a person holds their breath, at a certain point they just pass out. Because you're supposed to be getting more oxygen. When a person breathes out strong, there's a feeling of like exhaustion. A person holds their breath, they just pass out. But a person who's really like, you just feel like draining. Because there's something, and of course, the analogy can never be the nimshal, the actual thing, otherwise it wouldn't be an analogy. There's always going to be some gap between the analogy and the what's called the mashal and the nimshal. So in the mashal, we so to speak it's like sapping us. For God, He doesn't lose anything. He just gives of His inner core. So your godly soul is the inner core, so to speak, of God, the inner point that God transferred into you. Now, I want to point something interesting out. In the entire creation narrative, that sounded very academic. In the entire creation narrative, and everyone's like, he said creation narrative. I just went to sleep, thank you. In the entire story of Adam and Eve in the garden, when it talks about God making the world and creating the world, how does God make the world? Anybody know? How does God make the world? And by the way, He's making it every single second right now. How does He make the world? Yes, Manny.
Said it, or he thought it.
Vayedaber, everything is through speech. God spoke and it happened. Let there be light. Let there be fish. Let there be animals of spirit coming out of the land. Let there be gazelles and lions and tigers and bears. Oh my, let there be all this stuff. And by the way, when it refers to the actual types of creation, it says V'yas Elokim, and God made it. V'yitzar, and He formed it. V'yivra, and He fashioned, and He's creating. It's using all these languages of God speaking and making, and the entire creation, by the way, that includes all the spiritual worlds and the angels, are all made through God speaking. Now, we're going to have to talk about that, not for today. What does it mean God speaks? Does He have big lips? Like, our lips are little lips. So God's lips must be like these huge lips in heaven. The answer is no. It's an analogy, not for today. We'll get back to God's lips and God's speech. But all of creation is made through speaking. God is speaking. There's one thing, including the angels, including the demons, including everything, including you and I. There's one part of creation that is outside of speech. Who knows what that is? The man is also created through speech. The neshama, the godly soul. That's the one anomaly that should strike you as like, wow. The one anomaly in the entire creation saga is your godly soul. That's very interesting, where it's not by speech, it's through deep, powerful breathing. And one way to understand that is, when you speak, I want everyone to do an exercise for me. Speak, and put your hand in front of your mouth, and speak when I say 3. Anything you want, keep it clean. On the count of 3, and speak until I stop, and see if you feel plumes of breath coming out of your mouth. 1, 2, 3. Shalom Aleichem, everybody. Wow, it's so nice to learn the Tanya. Such a wonderful thing. So happy to see everybody. Man, you feel those plumes of, a little bit, right? Okay, you felt a little bit. Now, I want everyone to put your hand in front of your mouth, and we're going to breathe. Start. 1, 2, 3, until I stop. Lightheaded already. Why? I was like, whoa, that stuff's better than a cartridge. Why? And it's cost less money. Why? And it's easier to find. Telegram's not so pushing nowadays, they say in Israel. Cartridge is like, the guy's like, Red, did you find a cartridge? You're like, I don't know how you got that in. Much easier, much safer. Get high from Torah. We don't need all this stuff. That's another discussion. We'll talk about another time. The Torah and psychedelics and what our approach is. That will be another schmooze. But you know what's interesting is that how much more tired were you when you were speaking and when you were breathing strongly. It's obvious, right? When you were breathing strongly. Why is that? Because when you're speaking, only the external part of you is coming out. That's why you can basically speak all day long. To breathe strong, you get tired out. Why? Because when it comes to speaking, God spoke everything into existence here this well, which means everything else in existence, including the angels and the demons and all of the spiritual worlds, the highest angels, were only, so to speak, spoken. They were only coming from something more external to God, not the deepest core, something more on the surface level. Of course, this is all conceptual. We're not talking about anything in physical space here. But when it comes to the godly soul, that is from the inner core of Hashem, so to speak. And inner doesn't mean anything in physical space. Inner just means a conceptual, something more deep, something more intimate, a more intimate, private place of God. And that was what was given over in the godly soul. And therefore it only mentions, when it comes to the godly soul, that it was blown into man. This is very, very important. And anyone who says, no, that was just Adam, it doesn't have to do anything with me. No. Every single morning you and I make the blessing, Elokai neshama shenosati b'tahayrehi. Ata nefachta bi, Hashem, you blew it into me. I'm proclaiming that both, I was there, because Adam Kabbalistically included all the souls of humanity. We were all there then. But it also means that right now God is blowing into you every single moment, your godly soul. And you know when he really, really gets going? You know in the moment where you get your, so to speak, godly soul for the whole year? Well, first of all, Rosh Hashanah. Because when was Adam given that godly soul? Rosh Hashanah, right? Adam was created on Rosh Hashanah. And the blowing of the soul into Adam is on Rosh Hashanah. Which means Adam was a shofar, and God blew into the shofar that is Adam. He blew in that soul, and that's why on Rosh Hashanah we blow the shofar. We, so to speak, are summoning that soul. This is very deep. Both giving it back to Hashem, and at the same time we're, so to speak, in a crazy way, like God in the craziest way possible, blowing through the shofar, which is me, blowing that soul from its source, its core, back into me, the shofar. The shofar is us. And we're, so to speak, blowing the soul back into us, the godly soul that's going to be pumped up for the whole year. Your godly soul is so deep, it's so powerful. It's the source of all goodness. It's the source of all wonderfulness. It's the source of all. And the main Yetzer Hara, just so you guys know, the main thing that tells you you're a nobody, you're a nothing, the main thing that the Yetzer Hara tries to get you to believe is that you're not this soul. I'm giving you guys basically the secret of all of the strategy of the Yetzer Hara is to tell you that you're not this godly soul. No, it doesn't really mean that. You really are just like a sophisticated animal. You just, you and the baboon, you got much more in common. The main ploy of the forces of evil is to tell you that you're not a godly soul and you do not have a godly spark inside of you. Which is Amalek, that power of Amalek, Asher Karcha Baderach, to convince you that you're not godly, that you're just a product of a bunch of monkeys bumping into each other over millions of years. And therefore all of the depression and all the unworthiness comes from a feeling of I'm not that godly soul, and a feeling of it being covered over and it's concealed within me. And the whole renaissance of that consciousness comes from Rosh Hashanah, comes from my own Rosh Hashanah every single day, by knowing that the godly soul is being breathed into me. And that's why Nishmas Chaim, the soul of life, is the gematria, the same exact gematria, Yom Teruah Yeh Lachem, with the koilel. It shall be a day of Teruah, of the shofar. That shofar is the godly soul. That shofar is the soul being blown into me. And when I can be aware of this, you have all good. You have everything good. That God put his essence, so to speak, inside of us. And once I know that, I don't want to be involved in lowly things. I don't want to do some keg stand. That's beneath me. Not just the keg, it's just beneath me. That's not my vibe to go and not do nice things. I'm a prince. I have the Lord inside of me. I have a spark of God inside of me. If once you start associating with that, you're living a whole different life. We should be Zayach Mamish to feel this godly soul. We're going to talk a lot more about this. The next Tanya class is actually going to be very mature. It's going to be rated, is that in rating M for mature? There's going to be mature concepts in the next class of the second analogy of how God gives us that godly soul. So, come mature. And the Tanya is very advanced and it's for mature audiences. Looking forward to Rabbi Yisrael. Everyone have a wonderful day. We should be Zayach to be dancing together in the base of English. Amen.